born of him. Everything is sustained by him. And everything after annihilation rests in him. He is therefore the creator of the four divisions of the social order, beginning with the intelligent class of men, technically called Brahmanas, due to their being situated in the mode of goodness. Next is the administrative class, technically called the Kshatriyas, due to their being situated in the mode of passion. The mercantile men, called the Vaishyas, are situated in the mixed modes of passion and ignorance. And the Sudras, or laborer class, are situated in the ignorant mode of material nature. In spite of his creating the four divisions of human society, Lord Krishna does not belong to any of these divisions, because he is not one of the conditioned souls, a section of whom form human society. Human society is similar to any other animal society, but to elevate men from the animal status, the above-mentioned divisions are created by the Lord for the systematic development of Krishna consciousness. The tendency of a particular man toward work is determined by the modes of material nature, which he has acquired. Such symptoms of life, according to the different modes of material nature, are described in the 18th chapter of this book. A person in Krishna consciousness, however, is above even the Brahmanas, although the Brahmanas, by quality, are supposed to know about Brahman, the supreme absolute truth. Most of them approach only the impersonal Brahman, manifestation of Lord Krishna. But a man who transcends the limited knowledge of a Brahmana and reaches the knowledge of the Supreme Persona of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, becomes a person in Krishna consciousness, or in other words, a Vaishnava. Krishna consciousness includes knowledge of all different plenary expansions of Krishna, namely Rama, Nishinha, Varaha, etc. And as Krishna is transcendental to this system of the four divisions of human society, a person in Krishna consciousness is also transcendental to all divisions of human society, whether we consider the divisions of community, nation, or species. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Okay, so according to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the four divisions of human society are created by me. And although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. So the just one second. Yeah, there's a letter on January 16, 1970, to a devotee named Janardhan. And it says, Narada Muni says that men should be judged by their tendencies, not by birth, judged by qualities in actual work. Okay. Yeah, so if someone is born in a family of a low class, let's say, workers, but develops transcendental qualities, they should not be judged by their birth, but by their work and consciousness. However, the false, let's say, the false criterion that's being practiced today judges people by birth, whereas the real judgment of people is by their work and consciousness. So Narada Muni says that men should be judged by their tendencies, not by birth, judged by qualities in actual work. Yeah, so there are many examples of this. So therefore it says, according to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the four divisions of human society are created by me. And though I am the creator of the system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. Okay, so Purport says, the Lord is the creator of everything. Everything is born of him. Everything is sustained by him. And everything after annihilation rests in him. He is therefore the creator of the four divisions of the social order, beginning with the intelligent class of men, technically called Brahmins, due to their being situated in the mode of goodness. Next is the administrative class, technically called Kshatriyas, due to their being situated in the mode of passion. The mercantile men, called the Vaishyas, are situated in mixed modes of passion and ignorance. And the Sudras, or labor class, are situated in an ignorant mode of material nature. In spite of his, meaning Krishna's, creating the four divisions of human society, Lord Krishna does not belong to any of these divisions because he is not one of the conditioned souls, a section of whom form human society. Human society is similar to any other animal society, but to elevate men from the animal status, the above mentioned divisions are created by the Lord for the systematic development of Krishna consciousness. The tendency of a particular man toward work is determined by the modes of material nature which he has acquired. Such symptoms of life, according to the different modes of material nature, are described in the 18th chapter of this book. A person in Krishna consciousness, however, is above even the Brahmanas. Although Brahmanas, by quality, are supposed to know about Brahman, the supreme absolute truth, most of them approach only the impersonal Brahman manifestation of Lord Krishna. But a man who transcends the limited knowledge of a Brahmana and reaches the knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, becomes a person in Krishna consciousness, or in other words, a Vaishnava. Krishna consciousness includes knowledge of all different plenary expansions of Krishna, namely Rama, Nrsimha, Varaha, etc. And as Krishna is transcendental to the system of the four divisions of human society, a person in Krishna consciousness is also transcendental to all the divisions of human society, whether we consider the divisions of community, nation, or species. Well, that's very good information. Chaturvanyam maya srishtam
Gunakarma vivagashah
tasya kartaram
bhimam.
vidi akartaram avyayam. According to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them, The 4 divisions of human society are created by me. And although I am the creator of the system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. In other words, he's transcendental, or Krishna is transcendental to these modes of material nature. Okay. So, one second. The main point here is that the false system that is practiced by the Hindus, which says that your position is determined by birth, is rejected. The real system is that it depends on your quality and work, not on your birth and work. The false system is based on your birth and your work. But the real system is based on quality of the person and work. So if the person is in the mode of goodness and they work in the mode of goodness, then they are a spiritual person. And they can go even above that and become a transcendental person by being engaged only in devotional service. But the way the modern Hinduism works is if you're born in a certain family, that's it. You can't advance. If you're born in a Sudra family, you're a Sudra. If you're born in a Brahmana family, you're a Brahmana. Even though you might, the child that's born in a Brahmana family turns out to be a low-class person, they still consider, oh, well, he's got the thread. And his father is a Brahmana, so he's also in that family, so he's also a Brahmana. But that whole narrative is false. So the position of a person is determined by not birth, but by their consciousness and their work. So if their consciousness is Krishna consciousness and their work is devotional service, then it doesn't matter in what family they were born. But the way the Hindus, modern Hindus, have been, let's say, acting, it's based on it's not based on quality and work. It's based on birth and work. So because of that, they've created the false caste system. Whereas originally, just like there was one boy, he came to see this sadhu, and he said, I would like to become your disciple. He said, okay, but I have to know what your gotra is. He said, I don't know. He said, well, go home and ask your mother. Said, okay. So he goes back home and he said, Mom, I want to take initiation from this sadhu, but he said he has to know what my gotra is. Can you tell me? And then she started to have some tears in her eyes and said, well, I can't tell you because I was not having a good life earlier, and I don't really know who your father is. So the boy was shocked. So he went back to the sadhu, and the sadhu said, okay, what's your gotra? He said, well, I can't tell you. He said, my mother said that she was not having a good life, and she doesn't know who my father is, so I don't know what my gotra is. He said, okay, I accept you as my disciple. And the boy said, what? How come? He said, no, you're Brahmana. You told the truth. So that's the real system of understanding what gochu a person has. If they're truthful and they're following the regulative principles and they're being educated in Krishna consciousness, then the way they were born or what family they were born in does not have any, let's say, validity. What's most important is their behavior and their way of working. Okay, so this verse says, according to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the four divisions of human society are created by me. And although I am the creator of the system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. Well, that means he's eternal. He's unchangeable, means he's eternal. And a non-doer means he has no karma. Okay. So, the Lord is the creator of everything. Everything's born of him. Everything is sustained by him. And everything after annihilation rests in him. He is therefore the creator of the four divisions of the social order, Brahmana and Vaishya, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra. Okay. Beginning with the intelligent class of men, technically called Brahmanas, due to their being situated in the mode of goodness. Next is the administrative class, technically called the Kshatriyas, due to their being situated in the mode of passion. The mercantile class, called the Vaishyas, are situated in the mixed modes of passion and ignorance. And the Sudras, or laborer class, are situated in the ignorant mode of material nature. In spite of his creating the four divisions of human society, Lord Krishna does not belong to any of these divisions because he is not one of the conditioned souls, a section of whom form human society. Human society is similar to any other animal society, but to elevate men from the animal status, the above mentioned divisions are created by the Lord for the systematic development of Krishna consciousness. The tendency of a particular man toward worth is determined by the modes of material nature which he has acquired. Such symptoms of life, according to the different modes of material nature, are described in the 18th chapter of this book. All right, let's take a pause right there and take a look at the 18th chapter. And in the 18th chapter, let's see where it says all this. Yeah. All right, so if we get to 18th chapter and near the beginning, it says, verse number 8. Anyone who gives up prescribed duties as troublesome or out of fear of bodily discomfort is said to have renounced in the mode of passion. Such action never leads to the elevation of renunciation. Okay, so in the purport it says, one who is in Krishna consciousness should not give up earning money out of fear that he's performing fruitive activities. If by working one can engage his money in Krishna consciousness, or if by rising early in the morning one can advance his transcendental Krishna consciousness, one should not desist out of fear or because such activities are considered troublesome. Such renunciation is in the mode of passion. The result of passionate work is always miserable. If a person renounces work in that spirit, he never gets the result of renunciation. In other words, we should never give up our prescribed duties. All right, so then the next verse says, Arjuna, when one performs his prescribed duty only because it ought to be done and renounces all material association and all attachment to the fruit, his renunciation is said to be in the mode of goodness. Purport. Prescribed duties must be performed with this mentality. One should act without attachment for the result. He should be disassociated from the modes of work. A man working in Krishna consciousness in a factory does not associate himself with the work of the factory, nor with the workers of the factory. He simply works for Krishna. And when he gives up the result for Krishna, meaning the money that he makes, he is acting transcendentally. Wow. And text 10. The intelligent renouncer situated in the mode of goodness, neither the intelligent renouncer situated in the mode of goodness neither hateful of inauspicious work nor attached to auspicious work, has no doubt about work. The purport of that says, a person in Krishna consciousness or in the mode of goodness does not hate anyone or anything which troubles his body. He does not work in the proper place and at the proper time without fearing the troublesome effects of his duty. Such a person, situated in transcendence, should be understood to be most intelligent and beyond all doubts in his activities. So he does work in the proper place and at the proper time without fearing the troublesome effects of his duty. There it is. So a person in Krishna consciousness or in the mode of goodness does not hate anyone or anything which troubles his body. He does work in the proper place and at the proper time without fearing the troublesome effects of his duty. Such a person situated in transcendence should be understood to be most intelligent and beyond all doubts in his activities. And so that's 18th chapter, verse number 10. So verse number 11 says, it is indeed impossible for an embodied being to give up all activities. But he who renounces the fruits of action is called one who has truly renounced. Purport. It is said in Bhagavad Gita that one can never give up work at any time. Therefore, he who works for Krishna and does not enjoy the fruit of results, who offers everything to Krishna, is actually a renouncer. There are many members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness who work very hard in their office or in the factory or some other place. And whatever they earn, they give to the society. Such highly elevated souls are actually sannyasis and are situated in the renounced order of life. It is clearly outlined here how to renounce the fruits of work and for what purpose fruits should be renounced. And it's very interesting purport. So then the next verse, text 12, says, for one who has not renounced the threefold fruits of action, desirable, undesirable, and mixed, accrue after death. But those who are in the renounced order of life have no such result to suffer or enjoy. A person in Krishna consciousness acting in knowledge of his relationship with Krishna is always liberated. Therefore, he does not have to enjoy or suffer the results of his acts after death. Verse number 13. O mighty armed Arjuna, according to the Vedanta, there are 5 causes for the accomplishment of all action. Now learn of these from me. Purport. A question may be raised that since any activity performed must have some reaction, how is it that the person in Krishna consciousness does not suffer or enjoy reactions of work? The Lord is citing Vedanta philosophy to show how this is possible. He says that there are 5 causes for all activities, and for success in all activity, one should consider these 5 causes. Sankhya means the stalk of knowledge, and Vedanta is the final stalk of knowledge accepted by all leading acharyas. Even Sankara accepted Vedanta Sutra as such. Therefore, such authority should be consulted. The ultimate control is invested in the super soul. As is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Shichanam, Shridi Sanivista. He, Krishna, is engaging everyone in certain activities by reminding him, meaning the living entity, of his past actions and Krishna conscious acts done under his, meaning Krishna's direction from within, yield no reaction, either in this life or in the life after death. Okay, so this is a very important statement, especially the verse Sarva Sichaham Priti Sanivasta, that everyone in, that Krishna is engaging everyone in certain activities by reminding him of his past actions. And Krishna conscious acts done under Krishna's direction from within yield no reaction, either in this life or in the life after death. Okay, so basically it's saying that if we engage in devotional service under the tutelage or under the direction of bona fide devotees and do not waver at all in our determination to follow the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness, we become free from the cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease, and we're not accruing any karmic reactions. That's why in this purport, in this verse, 18th chapter, verse number 13, in the purport it says, a question may be raised that since any activity performed must have some reaction, how is it that the person in Krishna consciousness does not suffer or enjoy the reactions of work? Very good question. The Lord is citing Vedanta philosophy to show how this is possible. He says, meaning Krishna says, that there are 5 causes for all activities. And for success in all activity, one should consider these 5 causes. Sankhya means the stalk of knowledge, and Vedanta is the final stalk of knowledge, accepted by all leading acharyas. Even Sankara accepted Vedanta Sutra as such. Therefore, such authority should be consulted. The ultimate control is invested in the supersoul. As it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Sarvasya Chaham, Kriti Sanivista. He is engaging everyone in certain activities by reminding him, meaning living activities, of his past actions. And Krishna consciousness acts done under Krishna's direction from within yield no reaction, either in this life or in the life after death. Okay, so you have to go to the next verse to understand more clearly what's being said here. Ahistam tata karta karanam cha pritak vidam vividas cha pritak chesta daivam shaivatra panchamam. The place of action, meaning the body, the performer, meaning the person, the various senses, the many different kinds of endeavor, and ultimately the supersoul. These are the 5 factors of action. And in the purport it says the word ahistanam refers to the body.
Adhisthana.
Huh?
Adhisthana.
Adhisthana. Yeah. The soul within the body is acting to bring about the results of activity and is therefore known as karta, the doer. That the soul is the knower and the doer is stated, and that the soul is the knower and the doer is stated in the Shruti, meaning the Vedas. Esa hidrasta shrasta, Prasna Upanishad 4.9. It is also confirmed in the Vedanta Sutra by the verses Gnota Eva and Karta Shastrar Vartavat. In other words, the instruments of action are the senses, and by the senses the soul acts in various ways. For each and every action, there is a different endeavor, but all one's activities depend on the will of the supersoul who is seated within the heart as a friend. The Supreme Lord is the super cause. Under these circumstances, he who is acting in Krishna consciousness under the direction of the super soul situated within the heart is naturally not bound by any activity. Those in complete Krishna consciousness are not ultimately responsible for their actions. Everything is dependent on the supreme will, the super soul, and the supreme personality of Godhead. Okay, so basically, if we engage in pure devotional service, there's no karmic reaction. How to engage in pure devotional service is to follow strictly the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness and do not fall down under any circumstance. Then we come to this, let's say, the position of purity, of cleanliness. That way, we don't cause any karma by our actions. That's why it says here, the Supreme Lord is the super cause. Under these circumstances, he who is acting in Krishna consciousness under the direction of the super soul situated within the heart is naturally not bound by any activity. Okay, so when it says under the direction of the super soul, that implies also under the direction of the bona fide spiritual master.
Yeah.
Those in complete Krishna consciousness are not ultimately responsible for their actions. Everything is dependent on the supreme will, the super soul, the supreme personality of Godhead. So we cannot, let's say, ignore the spiritual master, because he's the one who's going to help us follow the rules and regulations correctly. So those in complete Krishna consciousness are not ultimately responsible for their actions. Everything is dependent on the supreme will, the super soul, the supreme personality of God. So to engage in complete Krishna consciousness, we should always be under the direction of the bona fide spiritual master. And whenever there's a doubt, we should ask. And it's not that there's only one spiritual master. There are many bona fide spiritual masters, especially in Krishna consciousness. So there's no excuse that, oh, I didn't know. There's no excuse for that. There's many opportunities, many bona fide, let's say, gurus or persons. And even if they don't have the title of a guru, they're still advanced devotees to get information from, so that one can ultimately ultimately follow the rules and regulations correctly. So those in complete Krishna consciousness are not ultimately responsible for their actions. Everything is dependent on the supreme will, the super soul, the supreme personality of God. So we should strictly follow the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness. But what is the purpose of it? It's not simply to follow the rules and regulations. It's to come to the point where we actually develop love for Krishna. Otherwise, if we mechanically follow the rules and regulations, well, there is benefit in doing that, obviously. But if we never come to the point of having actual love and devotion for Krishna, then we actually are not achieving the real goal. The real goal of Krishna consciousness is to love Krishna. And with the help of the spiritual master, we can not make any mistakes in the process of devotional service. That's why you have a spiritual master. Okay. And therefore, here it says, those in complete Krishna consciousness are not ultimately responsible for their actions. Well, that's a very good point. Everyone is going to act, and for every action, there's a reaction. But in complete Krishna consciousness, there's no reaction to the work that we do. Why? Because we have no material objective. We perform the action out of love and devotion for Krishna. Therefore, there's no karma involved. Therefore, if we say, well, I'll do this, but I want this thing, that's not pure devotional service. But if we say, I'll do this and I don't expect anything in return. I'm just pleased to see that Krishna is served properly or is pleased. So this is the position of the gopis. They're not interested in getting something back from Krishna. They're only happy when they see that Krishna is pleased by their service, but they're not expecting anything in return. So that is a very high level of devotional service, but we should all reach that level of devotional service. Usually people go to church and they pray to God, give me this, give me that. So-and-so is sick, please let him get better. business is not going good, please help. So the business does good. Oh, grandmom is gonna have an operation, please make sure nothing happens, nothing bad happens. So they're always praying for something. But someone who's a genuine devotee does not ask anything from Krishna. Obviously, Krishna knows what you need and what you don't need. A real prayer is not praying for something. A real prayer is glorifying the Lord. Now, to glorify the Lord, you have to have some knowledge. Right? So, if you don't have a lot of knowledge, simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, you're glorifying the Lord. You don't have to memorize many different mantras. No, if you simply chant the Hare Krishna mantra purely without any material motive, that is glorifying the Lord because you're chanting his holy names. So you don't have to be a pundit. You don't have to be some great philosopher or some type of person who is, well read, having read many different shastras. You simply have to be sincere chanter of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, not ask for anything material, but simply be engaged in glorifying the holy name of the Lord. So, in this age, the holy name of the Lord has descended in the form of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, this is the Yuga Dharma. This is the recommended way to make spiritual advancement by chanting the names of Krishna sincerely and not desiring anything in return, nothing material. So if we do that, then Krishna will take care of us in every way possible. Okay, so here it says, the word ahistanam refers to the body. The soul within the body is acting to bring about the results of activity and is therefore known as karta, the doer. That the soul is the knower and the doer is stated in the Shruti. Shruti means the Vedic literatures. The instruments of action are the senses, and by the senses, the soul acts in various ways. For each and every action, there is a different endeavor. But all one's activities depend on the will of the supersoul, who is seated within the heart as a friend. The Supreme Lord is the super cause. Under these circumstances, he who is acting in Krishna consciousness under the direction of the super soul situated within the heart is naturally not bound by any activity. Those in complete Krishna consciousness are not ultimately responsible for their actions. Everything is dependent on the supreme will, the super soul, the supreme personality of Godhead. Okay, but to be able to act properly in Krishna consciousness, you need a spiritual master. They'll not be able to do it without the bona fide proof. Now, where is that said? 1 second. So, chapter 12, verse number 20. Ye dharmam vitam idam. Yatok tam par upasate. Shraddha jana mat paramam. Bhaktas te eva me priya. Those who follow this imperishable path of devotional service and who completely engage themselves with faith, making me, meaning Krishna, the supreme goal, are very, very dear to me. In this chapter, from verse 2 through the end, from Mai Avesa Mano Yema, fixing the mind on me, meaning Krishna, through Ye Du Dharmam Vitam Idam,
Please come inside.
this religion of eternal engagement, the Supreme Lord has explained the processes of transcendental service for approaching Him. Such processes are very dear to the Lord, and He accepts a person engaged in them. The question of who is better, one who is engaged in the path of impersonal brahman, or one who is engaged in the personal service of Supreme Personality Godhead, was raised by Arjuna. And the Lord replied to him so explicitly that there is no doubt that devotional service to the Personality of Godhead is the best of all processes of spiritual realization. In other words, in this chapter 12 of Bhagavad Gita, it is decided that through good association, one develops attachment for pure devotion service and thereby accepts a bona fide spiritual master, and from him begins to hear and chant and observe the regulative principles of devotional service with faith, attachment, and devotion, and thus becomes engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord. This path is recommended in this chapter. Therefore, there is no doubt that devotional service is the only absolute path for self-realization. But, as we just read, in other words, in this chapter, it is decided that through good association, one develops attachment for pure devotional service, and thereby accepts a bona fide spiritual master, and from him begins to hear and chant and observe the regulative principles of devotional service with faith, attachment, and devotion, and thus becomes engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord. This path is recommended in this chapter. Therefore, there's no doubt that devotional service is the only absolute path for self-realization, for the attainment of the Supreme Personality of God. The impersonal conception of the Supreme Absolute Truth is described in this chapter 12. Is described in this chapter is recommended only up to the time one surrenders himself to self-realization. In other words, as long as one does not have the chance to associate with the pure devotee, the impersonal conception may be beneficial. In the impersonal conception of the Absolute Truth, one works without fruitive results, meditates, and cultivates knowledge to understand spirit and matter. This is necessary as long as one is not in the association of a pure devotee. Fortunately, if one develops directly a desire to engage in Krishna consciousness in pure devotional service, he does not need to undergo step-by-step improvements in spiritual realization. Devotional service, as described in the middle 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, is more congenial, meaning more happy. One need not bother about materials to keep body and soul together, because by the grace of the Lord, everything is carried out automatically. Okay, so
What was the verse number, Maharaj? You just read
12th chapter,
20th verse.
the last verse.
the last verse. Okay.
So the main point here is in this chapter, it is decided that through good association, one develops attachment for pure devotional service and thereby accepts a bona fide spiritual master, and from him begins to hear and chant and observe the regulative principles of devotional service with faith, attachment, and devotion, and thus becomes engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord. This path is recommended in this chapter. Therefore, there's no doubt that devotional service is the only absolute path for self-realization, for the attainment of the Supreme Personality of God. Okay, that's our takeaway for today. If we understand this, then we can go back to Godhead in this lifetime. So number 1, through good association, one develops attachment for pure devotional service. Number 2, and thereby accepts a bona fide spiritual master. Number 3, and from him begins to hear and chant and observe the regulative principles of devotional service with faith. With faith, attachment, and devotion. And number 4, and thus becomes engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord. This path is recommended in this chapter. Haribol, all glories to see you.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Any questions? So I was just reading from chapter 12 and the last verse, verse 20.
20.
Those who follow the imperishable path of devotional service and who completely engage themselves with faith, making me, meaning Krishna, the supreme goal, are very, very dear to me. Okay, so this is the gold standard knowledge. In the 12th chapter, last verse, 20th verse. Any questions?
Any questions online?
Maharaj, in the verse that we read today,
Speak a little louder.
18th chapter verse, Maharaj, that we read few verses in 18th chapter, right?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, so in that, in the last verse that we read, it is said that the soul is the doer. But my understanding was we are not the doer, Krishna is the doer. I'll tell you the verse number.
Okay, there are 5 factors of action.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's the body, the performer, the various senses, the many different kinds of endeavor, and ultimately the super soul. These are the 5 factors of action. In the purport, it says the word ahishtanam Adhistanam refers to the body. The soul within the body is acting to bring about the results of activity and is therefore known as karta, the doer. That the soul is the knower and the doer is stated in the Shruti. It is also confirmed in the Vedanta Sutra by the verses, and there's two different verses. The instruments of action are the senses, and by the senses the soul acts in various ways. For each and every action, there's a different endeavor. But all one's activities depend on the will of the supersoul, who is seated within the heart as a friend. The supersoul is the super cause. Under these circumstances, he who is acting in Krishna consciousness, under the direction of the supersoul, situated within the heart, is naturally not bound by any activity. Those in complete Krishna consciousness are not ultimately responsible for their actions. Everything is dependent on the supreme will, the super soul, the supreme personality of Godhead. So, there's something that is not said but is understood. And that is, you have to have a bona fide spiritual master to be engaged in complete Krishna consciousness. If you engage in complete Krishna consciousness, you're not ultimately responsible for your actions. So, if you have a bona fide spiritual master, then you can learn to be in complete, and you can be in complete Krishna consciousness. And if you're in complete Krishna consciousness, you're not ultimately responsible for your actions. Everything is dependent on the Supreme. Okay, so we should have a bona fide spiritual master. We should strictly follow the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness under the superintendence of, under the, let's say, the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master. And then there's a possibility that we can be engaged in complete Krishna consciousness. If we're engaged in complete Krishna consciousness, we are not ultimately responsible for our actions. Yeah, because we're not making any karma. We are simply pleasing the Lord with love and devotion. And we have a bona fide spiritual master that helps us avoid making mistakes. And if we make a mistake, with a bona fide spiritual master, we can correct our mistakes. Hare Krishna. Okay, any other questions? That's about 8 o'clock. So we're finished. We're never finished, but we're going to take an 11-hour break. Okay, no questions, no answers. That means everybody's brain dead.
All right. If there are no questions online, we are wrapping up the session. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Chant Hare Krishna and eat.